Alors, je dois remercier à tout le monde pour l'invitation et l'opportunité de partager cette expérience avec vous. One of the problems with this is that I can't see what you're seeing, but I've seen it before, so I hope that's going to work. And the next problem is there's a great big white book over my speakers. So, I'm getting there. So I've called this talk The Business of Creation. And I think that's because creatives need to be business-like and businesses need to understand creativity. Creativity is a bit of a buzzword. Everybody uses it just to sound good. But I want to show you that there's actually a science of creativity. And the claims I'm putting forward here are based on solid evidence. Next problem is I can't see my watch. Okay, I'll work that out. That's listed here. The case is that there is a new branch of the economy. That's the evidence that I'm referring to there. And it's based on a new technology. And I think Winnipeg is richly endowed for participating in it and leading it. And if we put our heads together, we can bring them into being. And I think if we do that, as Greg has said, there will be more jobs, more wealth, and most important, a better quality of life. So it's worth doing. I want to make a very simple observation. Every age, in some general sense, has its own characteristic technologies. So the Victorians had coal and steam. The post-war world had oil and electricity, and so on. These actually transformed what people consumed. They created the markets that they sold into. So with the Victorians, we got trains and ships. With oil, we got cars, trucks, roads, and we got household gadgets and probably mass media. And they also transformed production. With the first age, we got factories, then we got the assembly line, and then we got now Toyota's flexible manufacturing just in time, and many other things. So I want to say that there's a new age coming, and that the characteristic technology of this is creative labor, which I'm going to define, combined with ICT, that's information and communication technologies. And I'm saying that is transforming consumption and production. And the crucial point is at the bottom here, it's creating a new mass market. Or rather, it will, with the right policies and the right understanding. So let's just say it creates the potential for a new mass market. And the critical new element is design or consumer choice. Consumers no longer just want clothes, phones or cars. They want fashion, smartphones or designer cars. Products with aesthetic content. Now this isn't new, but it was once reserved for a cultural elite. That, I'm arguing, is what's being transformed by ICT and the surrounding technological revolutions. That puts aesthetic content in reach of a much better and a much larger audience. That doesn't have to mean dumbing down. And that's very important because that's the usual reaction. To the contrary, I think the symphony orchestra, with its program like Systema, is smartening up. It's actually releasing the creativity and capacity to appreciate the finer things of life that were once reserved for an elite. It's extending that to everybody. And that's really the task that I think is the most difficult but the most central, because if you don't do that, the mass market won't come into existence. So let's look at some basic facts, and I like to show these to people because sometimes people don't believe it exists. Now, I'm not going to do that motivational style and say, you better believe. There are facts, and as I say, they come out of 10 years of hard work. So if you look at this, you'll see that the creative economy is actually larger than, for example, the construction, finance, insurance, and in fact, the science economy, it's quite interesting, it's bigger than manufacturing. But it's also growing faster. So if you project that forward to 2030, 15 years' time, you see that the creative industry is larger than all those other three industries. And in fact, if you put it together with the science-based economy, there's a bit of overlap, so some care is called for, it's actually bigger than all three of those put together. And the growth that fuels this is quite outstanding. That little chart there probably takes a bit more time to digest than we've got at our disposal, but I've put it up in various slideshows so that you can find it if you want. It compares the bottom line, which is the growth of the UK economy, that's the orange line, with the growth of the creative economy, and that's the blue line. The UK industry, this is in terms of labour force, not wealth, has been growing at, it's basically static, 10% over 15 years. The creative industries grew 44% over the same period. But what's especially fast is the top line. That's creative workers employed in the creative industries. And that grew 138%. That's 6% a year. That's sort of Chinese growth rates. And it's already large. The number of creative workers in the UK is around 1.5 million. That's not a small proportion of the workforce. And it's already here, never mind what its potential is. And the argument is, quite simply, that little line saying the engine of creation is it's these creative workers themselves that are the new technology. And that's a very difficult thing for us to understand. We think of a technology as being machinery, sparks, things that go bump in the night. Actually, it's people, but it's people working with ICT and what we call the new economy of the city, the way that spaces work. Now, my definition of creative industries, creative labour, our definition is very straightforward. It's what we call non-substitutable labour. Everybody hears about the general trend for robots to drive out humans. What they forget is when the robots have taken over everything that robots can do, what you get left with is the humans doing the things that only they can do. And you get two things. One is actually a quite large growth of industries like caring, health, education. If you look at the US statistics, it's really quite surprising because it's one of the things that nobody notices. But you also get the growth of artistic activity and creative activity, and what that is, it's basically the creation of new things. So think about this Samsung Android, which I'm very fond of as an illustration of the new age. This has never existed in the universe before. That's quite a staggering thought if you think about it, when you think what the universe gets up to. Right. And that's because we make it, we humans. We decided we wanted it. It wasn't made by a robot. Robots are engaged in producing the thing, but not in conceiving what it should be or how it should be used. That's a human function, and that's what's growing. Now, next, we just want to see why that's driving growth. And I think here we get on to a little bit about the markets that it creates. I think we've lost a bit here. Yeah, I'm just going to talk about markets. Now, we recently, Radhika Desai and I, we are co-directors of the Geopolitical Economy Research Group, we went to China and we spoke about what they call the New Silk Road. Now, silk is an interesting commodity because it used to be prized. It was used by the European nobility. And they would patronize courtly music and fine art, that's where we got those from. And they also wore distinctive clothes to show what their social standing was. They even had laws that made it illegal to wear certain clothes if you weren't an aristocrat, because it was posturing. And the rising business classes catered for this, and that gave us the Industrial Revolution. If you think of it, the Industrial Revolution was actually all about cheap clothing. It's true. You just look into it, you see, everybody says cotton, but nobody thinks, what were they producing? Lots and lots of shirts. That's what they were producing, the occasional trousers and dresses. But for 200 years since the Industrial Revolution, almost everything has been about quantity. As many shirts as you can, and as Henry Ford used to remark, you can have it any colour you like as long as it's black. What's now coming is a new consumer demand for choice. And when they make choice, they use aesthetics. They use some criterion of distinguishing what they think is superior culturally. You might not agree with their choice, but it's their choice. And this is where ICT comes in. This isn't just computers. It's a revolution which has removed all the barriers of space, time, and quantity to service delivery, relations between humans. Okay, you used to have to stand in the room with the singer. Now you can and be there at the same time, or you miss the show. Now you can hear the song anytime, any place, and as many times as you like. That's a technological revolution in productivity. But it's not just about being different. This is the interesting thing. When you make a choice, let's think about fashion, for example, which is a very important industry. What you're actually saying is, I'm different from the people who don't make the same choices as me, but I'm the same as the people who do. Just like when you're a Jets fan. I know that people wouldn't like the idea of being a Jets fan. to be thought of as a fashion choice, but it's the same nature of choice. It's identification. It's how you define what you are as an individual by all the choices that you make. Now, that's a big leap, and I haven't got much time, so we'll just have to, say, read the literature, as one does at this point. But I'm going to argue that it's transforming production. And here's a list of manufactured products in which you now find design and content being the critical factor. A car enthusiast once explained to me, he said, until 1990, Jaguar, he was a Jaguar fan, they used to put a new engine under the bonnet every year. He says, now they put a new bonnet over the engine. That was a big change. And I remember when I was working in London, the point at which we realized things were changing was when Honda, a worldwide car manufacturing company, and the car industry had just finally pulled up stumps and left London. They said, we would like to put our design headquarters in Soho, because that's where the designers are. So we suddenly became the hub of the new car industry that puts bonnet over engine instead of engine under bonnet. And the nail in the coffin for me was actually when I heard that Canada Tire, love them, they're reinventing themselves as a designer goods distributor. And actually, I'm told they're doing it here in Winnipeg with good reasons. So there's quite a few mistaken ideas around about what's going on. One is that we're getting into the new age of robots. There's a lot of stuff now about the robotic economy are coming, and what are we going to do? We're just going to sit back and, I don't know, the robots will serve us. That isn't what's actually happening. It's a fantasy. Instead, you've got the growth of creative labour alongside the robots. So you've got a new marriage of technology and people. That's what's going on. Nor have you got what used to be called post-industrial society, in which we would dispense with machinery and learn to go back to nature. Now, people are very welcome to do that if they want, but even then, the technology actually helps them, because they'll probably take things like solar producers and so on along with them when they're sitting out in the jungle. So the technology is a crucial part of what the creatives do. They need us, we need them. The machines need the creatives need the machines. And that has very big implications for the way that we're going to structure, or that we would hope to structure, the world, the economy that's yet to come. It does lead to quite surprising results. For example, the return of live and the return of local. Now, this is a graph that was produced by the chief economist of the Performing Rights Society, who handle all the royalties in the UK. And he did a thing about what he called wallet share, because the music manufacturers were worried about the collapsing money, that revenues they got from traditional music sales on discs, on material media, because of file downloading. Same thing's now going through the film industry, and it's about to take over the book industry. We know it's going to take over the media industry. It's going on. What actually happens is people keep a constant amount of money that they want to spend on music, but they've got funds released because the discs are cheaper and they can download them. What do? They go and spend it on live. That's what actually happens. And that top pink thing there is the revenues from live performance. And you can see by the end of the period, more money is coming from live performance than was previously coming, than is at that time coming from discs and so on. So what you see in all industries is the arrival of the human factor. Lynn Scromida and I shared a platform with Tom Sparling recently in the Winnipeg Free Cafe, and she gave what I think is a remarkable fact, that in North America 10 years ago there were 100 festivals. Last year there were 1,000. That's a qualitative change in the role of live. And live means local, which brings me to place and space and all the things that Winnipeg and towns like Winnipeg could actually offer. And it's quite general, so coffee shops are being rebranded as hangout joints, bookstores are becoming community universities, well, even pharmaceuticals are reinventing themselves as art galleries. A small change, which I don't know if anybody's noticed, but you'll see it on the main high streets of London, you'll see it here with the Beulah galleries, and so on. So there's big changes in even manufacture taking place, in which the participation of the human is absolutely central. So what, finally, do we need in the way of resources? I love this map, nobody else does, so I'm going to inflict it on you. This is a map of wherever creative industries in London are dense, and the dark greens are where they're greater than 50% of industry. So they're actually, the dark greens there are where the dominant industries are. The most important thing is they're close together. Creatives cluster. They want to be next to each other. They want that rare thing that we call place. And place is not just space, it's space plus what people do in that place, which is critical. I've talked to many architects here who are with us today, and I think that's something very well understood in this city, and it's a very important understanding to have. So there's three things. I can't even see my own slide here, but I think I can remember them. It's the creatives, it's the technology, and the places. That's what we've got to fit together. What do we do? Well, this is really a kind of short list, and this is me signing off by saying, these are the things that you have to think about, and I hope you're going to come up with answers, because I don't have them. But I know they're needed, and I know that whenever they are present, something magical happens, which is the creativity grows. I'll try and run through them. I'm just going to walk away from the mic, I'm sure it'll work. Foster the creative places. That's, in a certain sense, what we're here for. We have a unique creative place in Winnipeg, in the Exchange District. I can tell you, cities like Birmingham and Sheffield have spent billions of dollars to get what Winnipeg has. So, as they say, use it or lose it. That's one of the things you have to have. Second, provide the creative technology. We have a space in which we ought to be doing very high-end stuff, and people haven't even got fibre internet into the buildings yet. It has to be there. Third, enable the creative people. There's a lot of stuff that goes around people. How can I grow a creative person? Well, and I feel like saying, well, get a plant pot, you know. Creatives grow themselves. You have to give the space and the possibility for creative. Whenever we try and find out in London how to build a cluster, we always end up saying you can't build a cluster. You have to go and see where the clusters already are. See what the artists and the creatives and the designers and the high-tech guys are doing, and ask them what it is they're doing and what they need in order to do it better. That's how you get creative spaces working. Networks, that's obvious. Bring the jobs here. Make this a place where we will be going Canada-wide, America-wide, worldwide, and saying, bring your industries here because this is where the creatives are. Canada, I can't say too much about this because the figures are still under the hat, but has a very big creative workforce in comparison to Britain and North America, but it's underutilized in terms of jobs that use it. So it's a great potential, but you have to bring the investors here, and that's where the evidence comes in. Finally, I'm just going to say one thing. You have to learn how to fail. Thomas Watson of IBM used to say that how do I double my rate of success? I triple my rate of failure. You have to, creation is about learning, but you have to manage it. It doesn't mean, you know, go and jump off a cliff and you'll feel better for it. Okay? It means you have to set in position a scientific process of learning from failure in such a way that you can avoid repeating the mistakes again. And the film industry has been very good at this for a long time. They actually finance their flops with their successes. And they have to do that. You have to have things that flop in order to get things that succeed. So that you have to get out the mentality of demanding that something succeeds before you'll back it. And there's a whole issue of finance and risk which is involved in that, which is very complex and need to be explored. I don't think our society has learned to create an atmosphere in which failure is tolerated. Well, actually, we need to be able to deal with failure in order to get a creative society. The last thing, brand. I go on about this all the time, but you need a brand. You need to know what it is you are, and it's not a pretense, it's not spin, but it's not underestimation. And one of the things that has concerned me, and I came here 4 years ago, what a fantastic place, is how much Winnipeg has downplayed what the potential of Winnipeg is. And I just think that's got to come to a stop. And we've got to say, this is a great place, because what we do. But that doesn't mean just jumping up and trying to count the newspaper inches that say we're great. It means defining what we are. That's the work that most of all I hope we do. What have we got? What is it? And then then go to the politicians and the chamber and the tourism and say, go sell that. Go explain to people that's what we've got here and get them to come here and participate. Now last about the artists. The artists are your infrastructure. So often people say we shouldn't spend money on art, we should spend it on infrastructure instead. If people had thought that 100 years ago in Winnipeg, there would be no trees in Winnipeg. Right? The trees are there because when they founded the city, people said, we don't just want to be a hick city, we want to show we're a civilized place, and they handed the boulevards over to the park department. Think about that as a visionary decision. Well, something like that, as I say, you can't plant creatives in pots, but something that says, actually, we need to curate our artists and preserve them. That is our infrastructure. Is part of what we need to do. And I have this motto that art can fly. If you don't do it, they can go somewhere else. If you do it, they'll always remember. And even though everybody I know in Winnipeg who is a part of the Winnipeg art scene has at some stage or other of their life come from Winnipeg and gone somewhere else, birds do fly home. So if you've got a home for them, they'll come back. That's it.